Are we set? Good morning and welcome. Muy buenos días y bienvenidos sean todos. Welcome to HED's 2026 Best Practices Showcase, celebrating technology innovation for Hispanic success in higher education. My name is Albert Troche, and I will be your host this morning. On behalf of the Hispanic Educational Technology Services Consortium, HEDS, we would like to express our appreciation for joining us this morning. We are delighted to hold this conference in person, and greetings to all of you today. First, we would like to acknowledge the presence of presidents and board members representatives from institutions in Puerto Rico, United States, Colombia, and Ecuador accompanying us today. To all of you, thank you for being with us celebrating this special occasion. HEDS will also like to recognize the many corporations and organizations that have contributed to making this event possible. Our distinguished sponsors include Ontology, the Educational Testing Services, Incumatic, CoviMed, Tex Access, Simplicity, American Heart Association, Miami EdTech, Desire to Learn Brightspace, Territorium, Dreamscape Learn, Online Learning Consortium, Raíces Cyber Org. In addition, we would like to thank Universidad Ana G. Mendez, Carolina Campus staff, its president Jose Mendez, and other heads of member institutions like EDP University, who have contributed to making this showcase possible. Once again, thank you for unconditional commitment and support. To you, we extend our deepest appreciation. Let's just give a round of applause. This historic event brings together, for the 15th time in HED's Chronicle, an unprecedented amount of expert accommodations. An outstanding group of professionals and students will be creating extraordinary synergy, highlighting the most prominent opportunities to enhance higher education throughout the savvy use of technology. Our HEDS Consortium is overly excited to have been able to obtain for this event the presence of more than 20 member institutions from Puerto Rico, United States, and Latin America. We will also would like to welcome attendees from other institutions and organizations who are joining us today. All of HED's institutions are known for being at the forefront of the integration of new technologies to serve its students. More than 25 received proposals evidence this fact. At this moment, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Jubelkis Montalvo, who was appointed by the Board of Directors as Executive Director on January 2026. She has been able to take the consortium through a 20-year journey of consistent evolution, expanding its membership, creating new services, and above all, promoting new educational technology options for its constituents. Let us give it a warm welcome and a round of applause to Dr. Jubelkis Montalvo, HED's Executive Director.
Gracias, Albert. Thank you. Good morning. ¿Cómo están? Buenos días. We are pleased that you accepted our invitation today, and as Executive Director, I am very proud to have been able to organize this extraordinary event for our members, partners, collaborators, peer organizations, and institutions. Thank you for your presence and constant support to HED's initiative. I would like to extend my gratitude to the ongoing support of our members, the valuable collaboration of the Evaluation Committee members, our corporate partners, and the consistent trust and guidance of the Board of Directors, our staff, and especially the outstanding staff from our host institution today, Universidad Ana G. Mendez Carolina Campus. Thank you so much for your support in coordinating this. Of course, coordinating all of these logistics and technical requirements of an event like this is the result of outstanding team effort. So please help me recognize their effort with a round of applause to them. Thank you so much. As a pioneer organization in the use of technology in higher education, HES is delighted to continue serving your academic and student community and the academia in general. This occasion is a special one because we exceeded our expectation, receiving more than 30 proposals focused on access, innovation, and online learning, including excellent initiative from our partners. Also, we continue to share a forum for talented students to showcase their innovative projects, including the ones who participate in the Student Passport Puerto Rico edition these past 3 days. Intensive but very fun, isn't it? Today, we also have the opportunity to see the point of view of a recognized keynote speaker who will be presenting the topic Framing with Excelencia, what works using data, practice, and leadership. We hope that this will be an enriching opportunity for all of us. Certainly, the Best Practices Showcase is an opportunity for academic leaders to share their vast knowledge and expertise. Likewise, it's a platform for students from our member institutions to present their innovative projects and learn from their peers. We are pleased to continue working together to carry on our mission, aimed on the transformation of teaching and learning through technology and the success of Hispanic and all students. Thank you again for joining us. I hope this again will provide you with wonderful opportunities for networking with other key leaders, students, and partners. Finally, hope that you may acquire important tools, resources, and lessons for faculty and administrators, continue enhancing your practice, and for students, provide new opportunities and support your academic goals in higher education. Thank you very much and enjoy the conference. Okay, gracias.
Thank you, Yuelkis. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Evelisa Crespo, Rivera Chancellor of the UAGM, Universidad Ana Jiménez Carolina Campus, for remarks as well. So let's give her a round of applause here.
Thank you. Good morning to all. Please receive a warm and respectful greeting on behalf of our President, Dr. Jose F. Mendez Mendez. It's an honor to address you at this edition of BPS Conference 2026, a gathering that brings together leaders, educators, research, and students committed to innovation and to the future of higher education. Today, we come together around a robust program that highlights essential themes for our time: the integration of artificial intelligence into educational processes, the evolution of online learning strategies for equitable access, and contribution to our students through their research and projects. At Ana Jiménez Carolina Campus, we firmly embrace these objectives. Our mission is to educate responsible and supportive citizens who are capable of contributing in sustainable development of their communities through a socio-humanistic education of excellence. We integrate research, technology, culture, and community engagement as essential pillars of our academic work. For this reason, this conference is not only relevant, it is a natural extension of our institutional vision. Every presentation, every dialogue, and every idea planted today strengthened our commitment to academic excellence and to the continuous transformation of the educational experience in Puerto Rico and beyond. I invite you to take full advantage of this space to learn, share, and collaborate. May each discussion enrich your practice, and may each proposal inspires new possibilities for the future of our students and our institutions. Thank you all for being here. I wish you a productive, inspiring, and a deeply meaningful day. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. To conclude our welcoming remarks, it is with great pleasure we introduce you to the head chair, Engineer Gladys Nieves. Engineer Nieves is the first chairwoman of the Board of Directors of the HEADS Consortium, elected during the summer board meeting of June 2024. Please join me in welcoming Engineer Gladys Nieves, President of EDP University and Head Chair of the Board.
Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to welcome you to the 2026 HETS Best Practices Showcase, hosted this year by Ana Jiménez University in Carolina campus. Thanks a lot for that. Today, I am sorry. Now I'm calling someone. Ay, Dios mío, qué funny. Today marks the start of 2 days dedicated to professional growth and the exchange of knowledge, networking, and sharing our best practices in education. It is what has led us to proven excellence, Excelencia. During this best practices showcase, we will explore more than 30 best practices focused on educational access and innovation, online learning and distance education, technological integration, and cutting-edge student projects. Take a look at that student track. 20 of these students and their faculty have been in Puerto Rico since Monday, visiting universities and presenting along their Puerto Rico counterparts. A true life-changing experience. The HETS Student Passport: Connect, Learn, and Lead. I want to recognize my colleagues from California, San Bernardino, University of Houston Downtown, Bronx Community College, Borough Manhattan Community College, and Universidad Cooperativa de Colombia for coming, and also Católica in Ponce, Inter San Germán, UPR Mayagüez, and Rio Piedras, EDP San Sebastián, and Ana Jiménez Carolina for their hospitality. Our opening plenary today will feature a distinguished speaker, Puerto Rican leader Deborah Santiago, co-founder and CEO of Excelencia in Education. She will present Framing with Excelencia, what works using data, practices, and leadership. Organizing an event of this magnitude requires impeccable logistics. My sincere thanks go to the Dr. Jubelkis Montalvo and Isaris Gutierrez, and all the colleagues who have made this possible. Our commitment remains firm to continue fostering the success of Hispanic and all students in higher education. Together, we will continue to drive innovation and collaboration into educational technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, President Nieves. The Hispanic Educational Technology Service Consortium has distinguished itself as a forefront organization in the integration of technology for the advancement of higher education and learning opportunities for the Hispanic community. Moreover, the HETS Consortium has elevated collaboration to a new rank, bringing together higher education institutions from the United States, Puerto Rico, Latin America, and representatives from the government, private, and academic sectors for the past 33 years. These sectors will be represented in this 2026 HETS Best Practices Showcase, validating the importance of collaboration for the success of the Hispanic students in our community. Today's distinguished speaker will discuss the topic Framing with Excelencia, what works using data, practice, and leadership to inform and compel action by institutions and leaders intentionally serving today's students. The HETS Consortium is proud to open the Best Practices Showcase with our main speaker, Deborah A. Santiago, co-founder and chief executive officer of Excelencia in Education, who believes in the power of higher education to link opportunity and talent for more than 20 years. She has led efforts from the community to national and federal levels to improve educational opportunities and success for all students. She co-founded Excelencia to inform policy and practice, compel action, and collaborate with those ready to increase student success. Among her contributions, Deborah created examples of Excelencia to identify and recognize what works for student success and develop the seal of Excelencia certification framework for institutions that go beyond enrolling to intentionally serving Latino and all students. Her work has been cited in the New York Times, the Washington Post, The Economist, and the Chronicle of Higher Education. Deborah serves on the advisory board of the Dream.us. Please help me welcome Deborah Santiago with a round of applause.
Buenos días. Good morning. Did everyone have your coffee outside? It was good, but I'm seeing that maybe we needed a little bit more coffee to get us going here this morning. I don't have a presentation because I want to engage in conversation with you, and knowing that we're going to have a panel of respondents that'll make it even more lively. But ¿se puede bajar? I know I'm short. Why do you have to bring attention to that? No soy la única, así que se sabe, pero ¿me ven? Can everybody see me all right? Okay, all right, great. ¿Me oyen? Even better. Okay, great. But a point of personal privilege, I'm so pleased to be with you here. I've been on travel for a while, but I'm based in Washington, D.C. And that's the context in D.C. is part of what I wanted to bring a little bit of conversation about in this framing of Excelencia. So grateful that 22 years ago in January, my colleague Sarita Brown and I started Excelencia in Education. Now, I don't have to tell this room, but we all know what Excelencia is, right? It's a great cognate because in Washington, D.C., I work with a lot of colleagues who are very ignorant about who we are as a community, the strengths and opportunities we bring. And after numerous years working in the federal government, local, state entities and efforts, I saw a profile of our community that did not resonate with me, very deficit-based, right? Los pobrecitos, where we are not. And it not only didn't resonate with me, I thought, why would we want to create policy and practice and do work with this deficit framing of what we are not? Because what we bring is a great asset. And I say Excelencia in Education is intentionally bilingual because we wanted to send a message about what we are about. And the first word is excellence, right? Excelencia. This is not just because we are Hispanic. And I say that because of the context we are in now, where some folks are challenged to even say Hispanic or Latino. We're here, we're not going away. But I will say at Excelencia, what describes us does not divide us, right? To say I'm Latino, to say I'm a military brat, to say I'm a woman and things, those are descriptors of who I am. That doesn't negate that somebody is male or, from another country or another background or consideration. To me, this is a critical part of framing who and what we are. We want to frame our work with excellence, with strength and opportunity. Because that's where we see opportunity. I work in Washington, D.C. People will throw money at crises and deficit. They invest in opportunity. They invest in what is possible. And one of the reasons I am so grateful to be invited by our team here, Yubelkis and Gladys and others, is because that's what I see here at HEADS. It's the opportunity that we have before us. So in this context, I jokingly say, maybe not jokingly true, but a lot of my work is ignorance abatement, right? Ignorance is not knowing. We can do something about that. What works? What are the actual profiles of the communities we are looking to serve? Who are we not serving and intend to serve? That requires that we educate ourselves. And there's a lot of false framing of who and what we are. Stupidity you can't do a lot about, but ignorance you can educate. And that's this room is about making sure that those who need to invest in the quality efforts and work you're doing understand the opportunities we bring forth. And I will tell you, after 22 years, I'm often surprised. I'm still can be in a policy room and be the only Latina in the room, often the only person of color in a room. In 2026. That's context, right? And so the way we do this work, here's part of the framing that I'm going to get into. At Excelencia, we know that traditional students going to traditional institutions and traditional pathways is lovely. How many of us went to college in a traditional way, meaning straight from high school to college, live on campus, a four-year institution and graduated in 4 years? How many of us did that? Yeah, it looks like at least half of us in this room. We are the minority. Students today don't go to college in the majority in the way that we went to college. I was first generation college goer as well until I wasn't. My father, after 20 years of taking classes in the Air Force, earned his bachelor's degree right after I started college. So I was first gen for a semester and a half, and then I wasn't because Papi got his degree, which is a proud moment. But I say that because we talk at Excelencia about kind of a profile of post-traditional students. This is, again, the asset base. And I'm giving you this framing because I want to get to what works and these things, but it's so important that certainly in public policy and the work we do with funders and others, you've got to frame something to get an understanding, to create space, to do the innovative things you all are doing. Because they have a perspective and mindset that is not actual and robust and is limiting. We believe strongly post-traditional students, instead of saying you're non-traditional, meaning you're not traditional, you're not the norm, already you're starting with the deficit framing. To say you're post-traditional says we're beyond that. The reality is less than 20% of students today fit that traditional student profile. You all know students are stopping out, swirling, started community college, right? They might not be as college ready given their K-12 experience. They're working 20, 30 hours, not the traditional role at all. How are we at our institutions adjusting, adapting, making sure we're student-centered and serving our students? That's a critical frame. And the reality is that Latino students are representative of the post-traditional majority. So starting, and at Excelencia, we start with Latinos. We never do it to the exclusion of any others. But we know that Latino are a young, fast-growing population, and that some issues, certainly in public policy, that seem intractable, like they can't be changed. When you look at a young, fast-growing population, does it create an opportunity to see things differently, to challenge the status quo, the traditional way of doing things, and find more innovative, technology-oriented, I'd gather, ways to impact and serve the students of today and tomorrow? That's how at Excelencia we frame this work as an opportunity, as an asset, not exclusive to Latinos, but unapologetically using a Latino lens as a way to reinvestigate and consider traditional things that are not working for students today, changing institutions so they can serve all students better. Because I will tell you what works for us as post-traditional students is more likely to serve others than the status quo and things the way things have been done. That is our framing. Hopefully in our panel we can agree, disagree with what that is, but I know that creates space for action. Why do I say that? Because our conversation here is also about best practices. I will say in Washington, D.C., sometimes I'm a little hesitant to say best practice. We talk a lot about what works, examples of Excelencia. Our work doesn't only focus on Latinos, as I said, but best practices presumes that what we're doing is replicable and scalable. And I will tell you, sometimes what is innovative is serving a community that historically has not been served. The innovation is, you tried it over here, are you serving the students that have the greatest need and opportunity? And so we often talk about what works, and we're looking to see, yes, it has worked. Does it work for our community? Does it work for other communities? Does it work at community colleges? Does it work for our adult learners? What do we need to tweak and adapt? Because what works in Miami, Florida doesn't necessarily work in Little Rock, Arkansas, right? And we have, we are everywhere, including Little Rock. We're working with some folks in Memphis and Little Rock and other places. So when people are looking for guidance about what works, we want to focus on what are the common threads? How do we understand the students we serve? And I will tell you, anybody else background in economics? Any economists in the room? Bueno. Uno presente, ya, okay. We have an approach at Excelencia that's really guided on how to speak to an audience that doesn't know our community and that is pretty vested in the status quo. The way we went to college, the way other students should go to college. You know, back in the day, what was that expression? You know, look to the left, look to the right of you in orientation. By graduation, only one of you is going to be here. That, you know, we got them enrolled, que vayan con Dios, it's up to them to get through. We got them in, it's up to them to complete. That mindset, that framing is very traditional and not really as relevant and appropriate for students of today and tomorrow. And so challenging that thinking, saying it isn't all just up to the student. Certainly students have a responsibility, but the institutions themselves need to find a way to meet students part of the way there because there's a social contract. A student who enrolls with you is looking to get a quality education. How are you meeting them part of the way to make sure that that social contract between you and that student is met? That's where investment in the kind of innovation and technology you're doing is so important. So at Excelencia, we have a three-pronged approach to our work. And it's focusing on data, practice, and leadership. That's not up there, but I will say, you see me say it. The reason I mentioned The Economist, I am an avowed and comfortable data nerd. Start with data, and I will say, for example, one of the things we've always found when people talk about our community on the mainland, talk about Puerto Ricans amongst all, is, you know, if you ever look, again, Data Nerds Unite, National Center for Education Statistics and others, Puerto Rico is an other. We do have the data, but it's an other. At Excelencia, we've always included those data. We add on because we are part of the US. We're all US citizens. I did work at the Department of Education where not even everyone employed there understood that. And despite the wonderful display that we saw at the Super Bowl halftime show, the Bonita Bowl, people are still only becoming aware of that. At Excelencia, we've always included that because it is critical if you're going to be looking at a group of students and populations that are leading the way. We can't exclude a significant part of who and what we are, and all the beauty and diaspora and connection. That's part of telling the story of strength and opportunity. So for me, data are critical. Data are the language of decision makers. I tell people I'm trilingual. I speak Spanish, English, and data, right? Because if data are the language of decision makers, they don't know us. Right? When you work at scale, you lose the face of that student. And that's our raison d'etre. That's why we do what we do. But at scale, you know, we're looking at how to serve 100,000 million students. You lose that richness. But it is so important that we understand it. Data are one way to do it. It's not the only way, but it provides context, some framing, opportunities for consideration. And I will tell you, for us, it's critical to create space for action and investment. And when we talk to funders, elected officials, data are the way we enter that conversation. Why does that matter? Well, you know, the data are clear. Not only are Latinos a growth population amongst all, and that we are in all 50 states and all territories and other places. When we look at the data, the opportunities are clear. There are gaps in degree attainment that create opportunities for investment, opportunities to innovate, so that we end up with equal outcomes. I know there's a challenge in this environment. Can we even say equity? So let's say equal outcomes. From wherever a student starts, our goal is to make sure the outcomes are the same. That means that you might have to invest differently, but if we're about equal outcomes, that requires that we're paying attention. You see how that framing matters? In an audience that might be hesitant to even acknowledge how we describe ourselves and identify. Data are one framing. It sets the context, it identifies opportunities, it clarifies goals, and measures progress. We shouldn't be afraid of data. Data, it can be our ally, and data can be a tool. I work with a lot of practitioners and powerful leaders, and too often data has been used to penalize folks, to show where you're not performing, what isn't happening. And often because we use traditional measures, just as I was saying earlier, right? Things like graduation rates, for example, are a wonderful measure of traditional students going to traditional institutions and traditional pathways. It's a very good measure. It's not a great measure, frankly, for students who are stopping out, swirling, starting at community college, and evolving, our adult learners and others. It's not a good measure. My father, who took 20 years to earn his bachelor's degree, defy anybody to tell me that's not success. But by any measure that's traditional, he's a failure. So data matter because we have to talk to folks who don't necessarily know our context and reality, and that's the language they use. Having said that, data can be used for good or for ill. So we also take a look at practice. And this is where some of the link with the best practices showcase. I look forward to hearing some of the efforts that students are doing, your campuses, you as individuals are doing. I learned so much when I'm out in the field talking to people who are actually working with students, because I'm in Washington, D.C., and it's kind of that insular base. It's easy to forget why we do what we do and for what purpose. We have to stay grounded in that. And that's why practice is so important. To us, we link the two, because you can have data that show opportunities for investment. So then what are you doing about it? If not, it's just a lovely report that a think tank that somebody else has to take action on. Practice is about taking action, and it should be informed with what we see and what we know, right? And interesting, I had a conversation recently. I was in LA just before I came to Puerto Rico. And I was intrigued to know that even the definition of evidence-based practices is different. For some people, evidence-based practices are based on research. Is it researched? Like, have you done, a control group to find if something is working or not? I think that's great. For us, evidence-based practices mean, are you showing impact? Not just participation, are you showing impact? That amongst all students who are participating, you are seeing progress of your Latino students amongst all. Again, this isn't just about serving one group, but amongst all served, do you disaggregate your data to see who is and who isn't being served? I can tell you many HSIs I've visited where they have high impact practices in place. And I asked them about participation. Are any of the students that could benefit the most from those high impact practices enrolled or participating in those efforts? And too often the answer was no, that they hadn't even thought to look at it, because the onus is on the student to figure out what are the practices and to work their schedule around it while they're trying to work full-time or part-time and managing family, and go to this high impact practice between your shift and all these other areas and efforts. That's a pragmatic view of it, but practice is more than just, we offer it. If they don't go, well, no, that's on them. That takes intentionality. It takes knowing who you're serving, and you're making a choice. And it's easy to say, well, we offer it, they didn't come. What is that expression? Build it and they will come. Not always. Our students are busy, right? I say that because I think a lot about HETS and the power of this network that you've created over this time, thanks to the leadership you've had. It feels like a kept secret. I don't know, do you guys ever feel that way? You're doing things that are innovative. Do people pay attention? Outside of the wonderful people in this room, do they know what you're doing out there? I say this because so many can learn from what works. You have and you catalog and you showcase the things that you see are working in your campuses across the country. Are you a best kept secret? Serving the 25, 30, 100 students at a time, 1,000 students. Part of practice is linking the students served with the practices that you know have an impact. And then I know when I work with practitioners, if you get an additional dollar, the practitioner will spend it on that student. They're not spending it on evaluation and marketing. I mean, there are some people that do. Let's be frank about that. The challenge I face in practice is we know what works. How do we bring attention to it? How do we get it scale? How do we get folks that claim to want to invest in what works to realize that it already exists and you have that evidence of effectiveness? When I was in LA 2 days ago, 2 days? Yeah, yesterday I traveled. We were talking to a group of funders and we said, when you know what works and you have the data to show it, why is it still so challenging to get investment in it when you claim you want to invest in the things that you know work? And we were positing, is it not sexy enough? Is it, is it not serving the constituency or the things that you need? Hopefully we'll talk about that in the panel too, because you're doing good work, you know it makes a difference, and yet every year is a struggle and a fight to get it funded. And you're looking for the next new sexy initiative, right? Who else is gonna invest in this kind of thing? And that's challenging because education is a human enterprise. Again, back to my economic background, what is efficient is not always effective. And what is effective is not always efficient. And education being a human enterprise is a challenge for us because our students who have not been well served require, to be effective, some inefficiencies. That is not easy to talk about at scale, right? And especially with your institutions, you guys do a lot with limited resources. I know as I was looking at the list of institutions and grateful that I know some of your institutions and the hard work that you're doing. At Excelencia, we try to bring attention to that, just like HETS and the best practice showcase is doing. It still feels too insular. We bring people to Washington, D.C., and we invite elected officials and funders and others. They need to see the good work that's happening. And I believe a lot of the good work that's happening as best practice can be translated to go to scale, to be institutionalized. How do we have that conversation? So this is not this wonderful program that served 25 students a year for the last 20 years has made a difference. That's significant, by the way. But how do we leverage that in meaningful ways? So that's practice. And then leadership. Oui? Okay. I'm looking at my time. I forget when I started, Beto. At Excelencia, when we talk about leadership, we're not necessarily or solely talking about the president or the provost. Important people that can create space in others. For us, leadership is institutional leadership. So we take a look at the strategic plan. We look at the use of HR and data at the institution-wide level. Why is that? Because at the end of the day, we know that the leadership does evolve and change, right? How many presidents do we have here that have been presidents for more than 5 years? Okay. How many presidents do we have in the room? Please, I see Nelson, okay, couple, okay. If we are constantly changing our mission, our focus, our attention, when a leader changes, who comes in with their new folks, the new initiative, a new celebratory cosita, the latest shiny gadget. No insult to any president when I say that, but just like elected officials and funders, they have their change efforts and strategies. What does that do to the core of an institutional effort that is student success? At the core, is it student-centered? Is it data-informed? And is it creating the continuous improvement we need that our students are served well and with intentionality? We have all of these elements. Part of the reason I say data practice leadership is that for us, it is the integration and alignment of the three. Data alone, you're a think tank, and that's wonderful and that's great. What do you do when you finish that report that has all, we are great at summarizing the challenges, no? We diagnose the heck out of the stuff out there. We are less so what do we do about it? And then, is what we're doing working or not? And is that scalable or not? And is it helping us meet our goals and raison d'etre, our purpose for what we do? That's what at Excelencia, we are focused on finding ways to bring attention. You know, it works, it happens. You know, when Sarita and I started Excelencia 22 years ago, we made a core decision. We wanted to work with the Coalition of the Willing. Because we realized if we had to keep trying to convince people that our community mattered, we'd beating our head up against that wall in frustration. There are people doing good work already, and often isolated because they're so investing in the effort that we were leaving power and impact on the table. So why don't we bring a community together that is doing it to learn from each other? We know with many of our students, cohort models work best. You learn from your peer. You don't need a sage on the stage. You need somebody that's been it, that's experienced it. Let's talk about it, share. We facilitate that. I would never say I'm an expert. I feel like I'm continually learning every time I talk to people. So data, practice, leadership, and how aligned are they? I would tell you, work with institutions that have great data because they select out for issues of equity. They're not open access. They choose who they let in. The hardest part is getting in. God bless them. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not really interested in those institutions. They'll do fine no matter what. And we have learned in many ways, sometimes students do well despite the institution, not because of the institution. I'm interested in Excelencia is interested in the institutions where students do well because the institution has made that effort and chosen to invest and knows who they're serving. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Do you feel that affinity? Si no, no lo digas, pero okay, got it. Yeah. So we can have great data, but the institution, nothing. I will tell you, we did some work with a top-ranked UC Berkeley. Wonderful institution. I was going to pretend, no, UC Berkeley. Wonderful institution. Their focus on Latinos, they were doing very well. Less than other students on their campus, but doing very well. And when we talked to students, it was mainly because their Chicano Studies program or their alumni were active, engaged, and what needed to happen. That is not the case with many of our institutions where we are looking to who we're serving and how we can serve them well. Not whether or not we have those elements, that's an investment, and often these are institutions that are either open access or have limited resources, and yet we are doing it. But how do we link the data with the practice? We have some institutions that have data, and we look at 5 years of data for the Seal of Excelencia. Has anybody heard of the Seal of Excelencia? Okay, a couple of people. We have some steel certified institutions in there. Cal State Bernardino, University of Albany. Hello, yes. I know those two. I don't know if I apologize if there are others in the room, but I know our colleagues in both of those places. They know it's not for the faint of heart, right? Yes, Claudia. It's the integration of the data practice leadership. That's how we tell our story. And I say that to you because as you look to best practices and how to frame Excelencia, how we are adding value to our students, you know your story of your institution and your students, and you can tell it well. Can you tell that story to an ignorant audience that doesn't know your context or reality? I will tell you, we've done some research looking at institutions in Puerto Rico. Happy to share that if you go on our website. Looking at the institutional resilience. We talk about institutions in Puerto Rico as being the trendsetters. We had demographic shifts, natural and health challenges, and governance challenges before the mainland. And we talk about issues in Puerto Rico. It's very reminiscent to rural institutions in the US. Outside of San Juan, right? Most of us are in that space. So we spend time making sure people are aware and see the opportunity. It is not easy, it's not a challenge, but can you tell your story to somebody who doesn't know what's happening in Manatí or Cabo Rojo or San Germán or other places in Albany or in San Bernardino? Choices of investment of resources, of where people want to go, what they see as opportunity, is often informed by the little they do know. How do we tell our story of excellence, of Excelencia? How do we talk about what works for folks who don't think they understand? And how do we also not complicit in these situations? I can tell you, we work with communities in Memphis, and as I said earlier, Little Rock. We get calls from, Seattle, Kansas City, all these Latinos are everywhere. And increasingly, we are the students, right? We're not going away. And we work institutions that want to know how to serve us while serving all. That's important. You have a gold mine of that evidence of effectiveness. You know what works. How do we bring attention to that as a network, as a community? So here are the core issues. I've got 2 minutes left, so I'll say this and then get to my call to action. What are the key issues now? I talk about Latinos again. It's symbolic, it's representative, it's not exhaustive of what the things are. You read the Chronicle of Higher Ed, Inside Higher Ed, all these things today. What are the issues? AI, right? Here, we have a perfect example of AI right here. Translating al momento what we're saying in either Spanish or English. It's the first time I've seen this, and I travel all over the country and speak places all over. That's ahead of the curve, right? Workforce issues. I know in many of my conversations with Gladys and other people, you are connected to your community and the service area and employers to make sure your students are aligned to the field and effort. We are only now talking about that in significant ways from a funder perspective and lens. And we're still fighting with, is it academic or is it workforce? It's both. We know our students go to college to get a quality education to help themselves and their families get a job. It's not an esoteric exercise. How do we talk about it in a way that's constructive without alienating the academic rigor that we bring with the critical competitive nature that's out there to make sure our students are well positioned? And is that not a way to define value? The value of what you do day in and day out. That's not any one measure, it's not one data point, it's not one practice, and it's not one strategic plan. It's all of them connected, right? And this network does that in concise ways. So AI, workforce, teaching and learning, pedagogy, and efforts still as relevant today. We still work with faculty and others who were never taught how to teach. They are experts in their discipline of study. That's great. But if you've not been taught to teach the students of today, how do you translate that expertise in discipline to ensure those students have the quality education they deserve? Teaching and learning, I think we assume too much about that. So AI, workforce, teaching and learning. We still have critical issues of student belonging and effort. We are not in a place where it's all up to the student to figure out what is our institutional role for student belonging and engagement. And the last two I'll say, and maybe they're linked, experiential learning that's tied to workforce, especially for our males, project-based learning and others. We need to make sure that we are paying attention to experiential learning, especially for our first-gen students that don't have that experience, and bilingualism. Was it our previous Secretary of Education said it's a superpower? Well, claro que sí, of course, right? I say these to you because you have all of those. In my work, looking at what HETS is doing, every one of your institutions, aquí estamos, here it is. How do we bring attention while you're doing the hard work at the national level? How do we engage? How do we flip that script from deficit to asset, from challenges to opportunities for the investment and the advancement of the critical work you're doing? That to me is a call to action. You already have the network to leverage, to advance, to tell those shared stories. I know HETS does that job, tries to do that job. I think in this day and age, in this context, how do we get to that next level? We can't keep being that wonderful, hidden gem, secret. Pa'lante y pa' frente. We have to keep figuring that part of it out. We do that in community, where we lift each other up, and sometimes, you need to take a back seat a little bit because, está fuerte la cosa, but then also find ways to support others in that space. I say that to you in hopes that as the panel, we come together. My time with you is up, but I think about this every day. I don't have the good fortune of having children, but my calling and my effort, my parents raised me to whom much is given, much is expected. And I'm grateful that I have the college education, but I need to give back, and we need to make sure that more have the opportunity, have privilege to have. That is my value proposition. As you all in this room have your value proposition, how do we manifest that? Not just in your day-to-day and one-on-one, but at a scale that can transform higher education. That's the opportunity before us. I look forward to working with all of you in making that happen. Thank you. No sé lo próximo. Am I here, in your way here? Okay.
Thank you once again for this extraordinary presentation. Your commitment with the improvement of education is truly inspirational. Now we invite President Gladys Nieves to the stage, who will moderate the questions and answer session with the audience. But first, she will start a conversation among our main speaker today, one active member and key collaborator from a member institution in the U.S. who have participated in all editions of the Student Passport, and one student from a member institution in Puerto Rico who participated in the Student Passport New Year edition last June 2025. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Mary Jo Parker from University of Houston Downtown, and Manuel Alexi Hernandez from Inter-American University in Bayamón campus.
Okay, so we wanted to share specifically, Mary Jo has been in the 3 editions of the Student Passport. She's also a board member, and she has brought students from Houston, University of Houston Downtown, the 3 times, twice to Puerto Rico and once in New York. And Manuel, he was one of our students that presented and came with us to New York. He's from Interamericana in Bayamón, okay? So,
Can you change the screen for the presentation in the podium, please? The technical staff.
So we started talking about experiential learning. We ended her presentation with experiential learning and also bilingualism. So we are a network, and sharing is our core, and specifically for this, I'm still not seeing the presentation. Okay. Okay. No. There it is. I know.
Now, when you have a mic, you want to sing. You don't want to hear me sing, so.
Well, we had wonderful pictures, but. Okay, so as soon as we get the presentation, we're going to look at it. But I wanted to ask, and I'm going to ask first the student, because we are centered on students here. I mean, and we talk about Hispanics and all students, but especially talking about the how we get to be in this podium, and we get nervous, and we're fully bilingual. But when we speak in a different language or our second language, we sometimes feel uncomfortable. But we're going to start with Manuel, because I wanted to ask him, from what you have heard and what you have experienced as a student, what do you think made a difference for you? And I know it's a lot to ask from you, but and you can speak in English or Spanish, but I wanted to hear from you.
Okay, for me, being part of the events like this just motivates me and other students to try and overachieve. So sometimes when we're in school, we're not that hurt, you know, we're just another student trying to reach a goal. And having the opportunity to just be heard and have people be receptive to what you're actually doing opens doors for you to keep doing what you want to do, you know, and being recognized helps you when you're feeling down because sometimes being a student it's hard. Sometimes maybe when you're focused in your studies, you want to be you're a little bit low on money, and you sometimes people can't keep studying because they don't have like the the money or the right attitude. And events like this just where you see the efforts from schools and also the efforts from other students helps you a lot to keep going.
Okay, now. Okay, so now that we have the presentation here, excellent. I wanted to share with you the purpose of the student passport. It's basically empowering student mobility and academic collaboration across the Americas. We're looking into making the students part of an experience where they present their own projects, but also share with students in the host institution their projects. And while they go from one university to another one, because this is about sharing and looking into synergies. So we had three editions. The first one was in Puerto Rico, and 140 students have participated, either from the host institutions or from the visitors. 26 institutions have been visited, and this was the first edition, and you can look into it. Sorry. We did 10 stops, so it was crazy. But we learned from that, and we went from San Juan to Ponce and from San Juan to Arecibo. And students had 10 stops as we speak. This was the stop in EDP University of Puerto Rico, of San Juan campus, and these are students from the San Sebastian campus who visited Medellin when we were with heads in Medellin. This is part of the presentations that happened that time. This is esto es en New York. Esto es en Ana Geméndez. Sí, esto es en Ana Geméndez, Gurabo. And these are some of the experiences that were recorded and are in part of our heads.org website. Okay, see, this was also, we were collaborating with the SUM, the Student Experience Summit. So students that were visiting the universities the first 3 days, and that the last 2 days were also participating in the SUM. Okay, so they get to experience all of the universities in Puerto Rico that were there represented. This was New York. We had 20 students from 5 HEADS member institutions in the US, Puerto Rico, and Colombia. And they were, I don't know, because I wasn't with them. Okay, so they took pictures and they participated. I think, sorry. Maybe you can see the ones with the pava is him. Okay, and this is how they, we also established a catalog with abroad opportunities in all our HEADS member institutions. And this was when they got to San Juan this time. on Monday. We started in Rio Piedras, and then we took a bus to Ponce, and the Catholic University in Ponce, and here is the Interamerican in San Germán, and this was in Mayagüez, and also in San Sebastián. Okay, so that was our student passport. Again, now I wanted to ask our friend Mary Jo, who has been in the 2 passports, anything that from her presentation that resonates with you, because I know you're more aware of everything that HEDS does.
Well, hello. Well, I've heard Deborah many times, and actually, I bring our students from the University of Houston downtown on every occasion that I can find to Puerto Rico. One, we're HSI as a university, and we're MSI. But what she says about experiential, part of that is the cultural experience. They may be Hispanic students. I do have some that are bilingual with me, and I have some that have never been out of Texas. And so coming to another place is just so meaningful. And what they gain, and I don't tell them what they're going to gain. I don't tell them what they need to do. They all have to present research, because to me, you bring the academic with you and you share, right? You still have to have the academic, but they immediately and it was a larger bus this go around, they had to talk to people. They had to sit with other people. And I had somebody in the group the first night as we're going from the Nest Hotel, to my Ponce, say, and I happen to be sitting with her, say, Dr. Parker, this is just so much more than I expected. I didn't know what I was going to get into. And she's fairly shy, but she can vocalize very well. She's presenting today. So I think changes can occur in students very quickly. And I ask for volunteers. It's very difficult. Other students will say, well, she has favorites. No, I don't. I ask for volunteers, and I find the money. If I have 6, I'm going to bring 6. But I think what Deborah says about the scaling up is the difficult part. Sometimes you have to have the small wins in order to get the massive win. And that's what we have to look at, I believe. I'll leave it there.
I think that what works needs to be documented. See? So this is important. And the research that Deborah has led is very important. So I urge you, I know she didn't bring a presentation, but go through the website. The HEDS.org website has a lot of resources. If it doesn't reach the students, it has no meaning. And for those of you that are in research and in faculty, the Excelencia in Education, go to the website, look for the research, see the What Works database. And I just want to make sure that you're going to find their synergies. So
I want to add that. Okay, I want to add that I totally agree. And in, I want to say 2011 or 12, when I first came to University of Houston downtown, I found Excelencia, and I had heard her at a conference, and Sarita también. speaking of the data they were trying to put together, and I immediately I run a program, and I immediately looked at data that we had because that's what was missing. When I got there, I found no solid data. You couldn't see, they'd been around for 10 years. So I put a program up, and it got selected as a semifinalist. So, we went, now the university as a whole touts that. And then other units began to apply. So you have the leadership that you talk about. It may be, you have to have those people that are invested in showing what does work, even if it's not the entirety of the university. But if we're not telling each other what works, explaining what works, writing about what works, we will never get better, right?
Do we have questions from the audience? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say this because I so appreciate that. Part of the reason we started Examples of Excelencia, just like I imagine your best practice showcase, is that, for us, we work on behalf of students. We don't work directly with students. There's so many people doing that good work. It wasn't getting to the decision makers and the funders that people are doing good work that we need to invest. And that's why we wanted to bring attention. And I can tell you, many people would say, they were in tears because they would see recognition at the national level, not from Excelencia alone, but rather from peers and colleagues of Common Cause. And I just don't want to minimize that either, because it is hard. I don't know, for those of you that speak Spanish and English, you're constantly code switching. You're constantly trying to translate what is relevant and resonates with people who don't know your context. And what we try to do is, can we make the data a little bit easier so you can focus on the students, but you have to talk to your funders and others in a way that is different than you talk to your students. With all respect, that is your priority, and do well, but it only gets so far.
Right, and I would add, you have to know your own data. I recall when I was first there putting together the initial data, and I had my hiring manager call me in and say, well, you can't use that number, it's too low. And I said, well, we have to use it. And then what we'll show is the trend upward, and we have. And so I just, we have to own the failure, and we have to own the success or the rise to success. But if you don't tell your story, numbers or otherwise, you think you're in an island, but you're not. We're together in this.
Thank you. Any question? A question.
Hola. Xiomara Giordano. I am the Assistant Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer from Empire State University in New York State. Thank you so much, Deborah. Really what you shared was very resonant with me, and I find it very valuable. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, I really love the kind of perspective between deficit and asset-based kind of discourse when we're talking about our students. But the Academy's purpose is to upskill us, and how do we not become complicit in creating those feelings of deficit within our students when we're helping them upskill, right? So how do we navigate that tension between you are excellent, I believe you can do more, and, right, this is the standard. So how do we navigate that tension in your opinion?
This is like rubber bands only work with tension, right? That's the whole effort. So I don't think tension is a bad thing. I so appreciate your comment, because this is where, for me, part of this is framing. And I'm not saying this is perfect, but what we've learned is that we have to show that we are action-oriented and can resolve and solve for things, not just diagnose that problem. And, we've seen language people go from at risk to at promise. We talk about being non-traditional from being post-traditional. There's a framing opportunity that gets people out of their comfort zone and thinking differently. And I say that because When I talk to policymakers and others, we're good at talking about challenges. And I always say, and where are the opportunities? Because we are solving that for you. They are so used to academicians diagnosing the problem. And then at the very last of a 200-page document, you find 2 or 3 recommendations. And the recommendations are things like invest in higher education. Bueno, pues, okay, all right. But concrete things. And so what I appreciate about best practices showcase and why we bring examples of Excelencia and what works, it's concrete. They're going to look to you if you can give them something concrete to do. It's not boiling the ocean. That's why for us, continuous momentum and improvement is there. So I'd say to you, start with yourself and bring that asset-based lens. Instead of just talking about challenges, talk about opportunities. Like I started with data. We see there's a gap in educational attainment between Latinos and others. Rather than lamenting that, saying, my institution is addressing that. And we have a plan to close that gap. Now you go from being the problem to the solution, and people are looking for those solutions. And that's the same, I think, with students. Students come to an education, to get a quality education, to advance where they are. If they were already experts, they wouldn't need the degree, right? So how do we show we're adding value in an asset-based ways to that student? And how do they keep showing that? To me, it's a framing, but every day we have to prove ourselves. And I often work with people who just assume they don't have to prove anything they've been given. The onus is on us to tell our story, and the onus is on us to be asset-based rather than the ay bendito, which, we all grew up with that, and, I have my saying of that. But we have to be problem solvers in a space where we're often seen as the problem. And that's a framing.
And we have no more time in this session, but she's gonna be with us the rest of the day. And I urge you to continue looking into what works, database and the research. Puerto Rico was a focus of the research for 2021 to 2023. There's a complete report on that. So I urge you to look into it and go ahead with a lot of learning for the rest of the day and tomorrow, okay? Thank you.
Thank you for the enriching discussion with the point of view of the faculty, students, administrators, and the partner organizations. Before we conclude, we invite our opening plenary participants to stay on stage and welcome Dr. Joaquin Montalvo to recognize them with a token of appreciation. With this opening plenary, we officially start the 2026 Heads Best Practices Showcase. You are cordially invited to attend our breakout sessions. Presentations rooms are identified in the conference program, accessible using the QR code on the back of your name badge. Also, you can ask for the print copy at the registration area at the auditorium lobby. Before we conclude this session, we would like to share some important news and instruction. There is simultaneous translation available for the Spanish presentations at the auditorium and room A146 if needed. You can request it and access the translation from your cellular using a QR code provided by the host of this session. All participants, please have your lanyard visible at all times to facilitate access to all presentations. Lunches and the coffee station are available throughout the concurrent sessions. At the registration area, you will find additional information